Good evening, Professor. My name is Narayan Guragai, and I'll be presenting on the topic Workplace Violence and Harassment in Canada, Existing Scenario and Ongoing Mitigation Reports. I have organized my presentation into 6 categories. The first one is the definition of what is workplace violence and harassment. And then I'll be talking about prevalence of workplace violence and harassment in Canada. I'll be looking at the numbers that I've compiled from various sources. I'll compare according to occupation groups and also compare according to the cases that are related to violence and harassment and those cases that are related to other incidents at the workplace. And third, I'll be talking about the factors that lead to violence and harassment. And then I'll be talking about the ongoing efforts by various agencies and government bodies in Canada to counter violence and harassment. And fifth, I'll be talking about my recommendations that I have presented in my research paper. And finally, I'll be presenting my conclusion. So let's begin with the definition of workplace violence and workplace harassment. According to the Government of Canada, especially a department called Employment and Social Development Canada, any action, conduct, threat, or gesture that can cause harm, injury, or illness to an employee at the workplace, that's a violence. And harassment is different from violence. Harassment is defined as an improper conduct by an individual that's directed at or is offensive to another individual at the workplace. So it's a sensitive matter. Anything that's understood as offensive is a harassment. Now, regarding legislative jurisdiction, Canada has decentralized its responsibility to make laws and implement them. So at the center, there is federal government that makes laws for the workers who work for federal agencies and crown corporations. And at the provincial level, there are 13 jurisdictions, 10 provincial bodies and 3 territorial bodies. And since we live in Ontario, the laws that govern us in terms of workplace health and safety is Occupational Health and Safety Act. Now, what's the prevalence of workplace violence and harassment in Canada? In order to research on this, I mainly looked at 2 reports. The first one is a consultation report published by Federal Government of Canada, and another one is a report by Association of Companies and Boards of Canada. So, according to that consultation report, which asked questions to 1,178 respondents, 60% of them said they experienced harassment at the workplace. So it shows the prevalence of this serious matter. A lot of people are facing harassment and violence at the workplace in Canada. This is what we learned from this report. And according to the report published by Association of Workers' Compensation Boards of Canada, in 2014 there were 6,402 cases related to violence and harassment across the country. In 2015, that increased to 7,150. In 2016, that went over 8,000. So it shows that the trend is on the rise, at least in these years. Now, while we look at the total number of cases related to violence and harassment at the workplace and other claims, we see a different picture. The total number of health and safety claims, claims related to health and safety issues at the workplace are a lot. For example, in 2015 alone, there were over 230,000 cases of workplace incidents, whereas incidents related to only violence and harassment at the workplace were around 7,000 that year. So what it shows is that the cases related to violence and harassment are a very small fragment of the overall scenario of health and safety in Canada. Now, while we look at data in terms of province, most cases of workplace violence and harassment were registered in Ontario, BC, and Quebec, because these are the provinces where most people live and work, so it's obvious. In 2016, there were over 2,500 cases of assaults, violence, sex, and harassment in Ontario, whereas in BC there were over 1,600 cases, 1,692 cases exactly, and in Quebec there were 1,642 cases. And these are the numbers, number of cases of assaults, violence, sex, and harassment that were registered in other provinces across the country. Now, in terms of occupation groups, people working in the health sector seem to be facing a lot of harassment and violence in Canada. After that occupation group, what I found is that people working in sales and service sector, they face violence and harassment, and that group was followed by the professions related to social service, education, and government services. So mainly people in health sector, people in sales and service sector, people in teaching, social services, and government services. So workers working for these professions face harassment and violence, mostly in Canada. Of course, there are other professions as well, but the large number of cases related to workplace violence and harassment are considered in these three occupation groups. Now, what are the factors that lead to violence and harassment at the workplace? Based on my research, I found these 6 factors. The first one is working public or working alone or in a small number. Second, handling valuables and drugs. And next is working with volatile and unstable persons or in premises where alcohol is served. And next is working during strikes and civil organization situations. And fifth, working in certain time and seasons such as nights, early morning, or periods or tax season. And finally, people working in areas with high crime rate also are likely to face harassment and violence. So policymakers and the workers themselves working in these scenarios have to be especially cautious and have to be careful. Now, what are the efforts by the federal government and provincial government across the country to minimize the cases of violence and harassment at the workplace? So I looked at mainly those efforts initiated after 2016. So I found 2 things. The first is Bill 65, that's introduced by the federal government. So this bill focuses mainly on 3 things: preventing incidents, responding to incidents, and supporting victims. And next is one effort initiated by Alberta government. In which it started a campaign to educate stakeholders and make people aware of the matters related to health and safety at the workplaces. So these are the only 2 things that I found. Now, what are my recommendations? After doing this research and after going through a lot of materials on violence and harassment in the Canadian workplace, so these are my recommendations. The first thing is that there should be better policy implementation. And second, there should be mandatory training for workers. And third, there should be compulsory reporting provision, because what I found is that the reporting system is not good. For example, there aren't enough published materials. For example, though there are over 8,000 cases of harassment and violence in Canada, people rarely talk about it. People don't know this information is not disseminated and circulated across the country properly. And next is that there should be better participation of employees at the workplace for policy making and policy implementation. And next is that there should be proactive inspections. So if there are inspections that happen only at the response of incident, this is not going to prevent cases of harassment and violence. And next, there should be stringent rules. And finally, there should be a mechanism to support victims. So these are my recommendations. So I think if these steps or initiatives are implemented, a lot of cases of workplace violence and harassment can be mitigated or reduced to a large extent. Now, these are the references that I used to prepare my research. So as I said, I mainly got the data from Association of Workers' Compensation Boards of Canada and the consultation report by federal government. Besides that, I also used a lot of online resources from government agencies and departments, and also a magazine. And one book that I liked most while doing this research was named The Political Economy of Workplace Injury in Canada. It provided a good philosophical understanding about the matter to me, though it did not present good numbers, or it did not provide exact scenario, but it presented to me a good perspective to look at this matter. So that's it. This is my research. I hope you like it. Thank you so much and have a good day. Bye.